Welcome to the Lessons from the Leap podcast, where we showcase visionary entrepreneurs and leaders, sharing their incredible journeys and inspiring stories. Let's dive into the show.
Hello and welcome to Lessons from the Leap. I'm your host, Gazanfer Mansoor. On this show, I get to sit down with entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders, talk about bold decisions, pivotal moments, and innovative ideas that shape their journey. This episode is brought to you by Technology Rivers. At Technology Rivers, we bring innovation through technology and AI to solve real-world problems. We do this in two ways. First, by helping businesses streamline and automate their operations. Second, by partnering with startup founders, entrepreneurs, and product owners to create innovative software products from SaaS platforms to web and mobile apps. A big part of our focus is healthcare, where we work with health tech companies to build HIPAA-compliant software. If you want to learn more about us, head over to technologyrivers.com and tell us more about your project. Today, we have a very interesting guest, Don Williams. Don is the founder of Dozens Company, business coach, consultant, keynote speaker to many international conferences, host of a podcast, author of 9+ books. Don, welcome to the show. There's so much more. I don't want to read your intro. I want you to tell us everything about you.
Oh my!
You have a free time to whatever it takes to share.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm honored. And so a little bit about me. I'm basically a Kansas farm boy who I think my first job was at 11 driving a tractor at wheat harvest. And you couldn't do that today, but back then that was not unusual. And I learned two things that day. One, farming is really hard work. And if you ate today, you should hug a farmer somewhere. And two, I didn't want to be a farmer when I grew up. And so I started out in selling and was very successful in selling. And that led me to entrepreneurship. And as a 35-year entrepreneur, 38-year entrepreneur, I have done a lot of things. And I'm fortunate that many of those things I've done well. And so I've written books and I love, in fact, I actually think we met, because for 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, I think I was speaking in Washington, D.C.
You have a really good memory. Yes.
And I think
your chapter in DC.
Yeah. And I think after the talk, you came up and introduced yourself and we have seen each other from time to time, since that time. I have a podcast. I've written a bunch of books. I would say words are my superpower. And so I speak them, I write them, I record them. And my mission in life, more important than my business missions, my mission in life is to help others help others. And so I find many ways to do that. So one of the things I'm really passionate about right now is leadership. And so I think that the number one skill that you can improve that will affect every area of your life, your business life, your family life, your personal life, is to improve your leadership. And since you kind of gave me the mic, I'm going to preach a little bit on leadership for a minute, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So think about leadership like this. I truly believe a leader only has kind of like two jobs. One, cast and tell everybody the mission of the business, the vision of the business, where are we going with the business. So that's job one. Decide what it is and then tell everybody every day, every time you talk to them, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to do. And then two, go get the best people on the planet to help make that happen. A leader's job is not actually to do the work. It's to find and equip people to get the job done. And so in my consulting practice, where I help people primarily with leadership, is what I call the 3 M's. So 3 and M's. So the first is mindset. And a lot of times when you say mindset, people go, oh my gosh, foo-foo, whatever. You're like, yeah, it's really, really important. And where I find most leaders fall short with mindset is they're just not thinking big enough. And so it's like, for whatever you're thinking, are you thinking about, are you thinking about 10x or are you thinking about 2x? Dan Martell talks about that. Are you thinking about great big or just a little bit bigger? And because it's actually easier to do great big than it is to do a little better. Okay, so mindset, kind of the number one thing there is, are you thinking big enough? And most leaders, when they ask themselves that question, their answer is, no, I'm not thinking big enough. I used to think big, but the friction of the world, the friction of challenges, have shrunk my thinking. So that's one. The first M is mindset. The next is mission. What is the mission? And so I think back to an event I chaired a year ago, NEO, okay, where we met, and it was a regional event. And when the committee elected me to chair, I said, I'll do that if you accept my mission. And they said, well, what's your mission? And I was like, well, my mission is to do the best event ever. And they questioned me. They said, what's that mean? Does that mean like the best regional event? I was like, it's pretty clear. Best event ever. They said, does that mean the best EO event? I'm like, you guys are making this way too hard. Best event ever. And so for 150 meetings and zillions of phone calls, we started every one with, remember, we're setting out to do the best event ever. And literally 10 days before the event, we've been working on it, I don't know, 20 months, something like that. 10 days before the event, we've been holding out a speaker slot for Elon Musk. Okay. And 10 days before, we come to the realization we're not going to get Elon, and so we book somebody else. But we were shooting for the moon. Best event ever. And, he doesn't really come and talk to 600 people, but we tried. So mindset is, are you thinking big enough? And then mission, are you looking for the best? Are you looking right now? Are you looking for 2026 to be your best year ever? Okay, because if you're not, that ought to be your mission. And then the third is methodology. And so you're in software development. I mean, probably no industry relies more on sound practices, sound policies, sound procedures, sound methods. And so in whatever mission you're leading, you have to have sound methods. You cannot fly by the seat of your pants. Okay. There has to be a method to your madness. We don't, and I forget who did this quote. It's not mine, but we don't really grow to the size of our goals as much as we fall to the level of our systems or methods. And so if you want to be a great leader, and let me define leader. A leader is someone who's going somewhere. If you're just roaming around, you're not leading, you're just lost. If you're just sitting there, you're not leading. You have to be going somewhere. And then here's where a lot of people get confused between position of leadership and actual leader. A person may have a title and a responsibility, and that would be a position of leadership. But a leader could stop. Remember, they're going somewhere. They're moving. They're going somewhere. They could stop moving, turn around, look behind them, and there would be at least one person following them of their own free will. And if there's no followers, you cannot be a leader by definition. Okay. I mean, you have to
True, true.
have people following you. And so I encourage the audience, if you think your leadership is not up to snuff, reach out to Gazan for reach out to me. There's a lot of people who can help with that, but nothing will improve every area of your life like improving your leadership.
Oh, thank you. Really good insight. So, uh, I attended Eccentric, and that was one of the best event I attended, and that made me go again this year. So that was a proof of that. So,
Great.
um, absolutely, and it was obviously, no doubt, the best event. At the same time, you mentioned about Elon Musk, and as you were talking about the mindset, one of the things he says, well, I put my 10-year goals and then I tried to do it in 1 year.
Yeah.
And the same thing, and I was reading about uh, the recent, you may have read in the news about the compensation plan or of Elon Musk, where he had such an aggressive goal that even his board says it's not realistic. But his comps were based off of that. It said, well, if I do it, then I'll get paid. So how good is that? So definitely, I'm with you 100% on the mindset part.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet against Elon Musk. I'm just
Of
saying,
course.
I wouldn't bet against him. He's if you look back at Steve Jobs and um, the co-father really of Apple, you know, without Wozniak, Apple's not where it is today. Okay, it took both of them. Okay, they have different skill sets and they fit well together. Um, but Jobs was the visionary. Wozniak was the integrator, the implementer. He was the guy that had the technical chops. Okay, technical genius. Jobs really wasn't a technical genius. Jobs was a genius who wanted the customer to have the best experience ever. And he was kind of militant about it. He was a jerk in the company. If something took two steps instead of one, if it could have been intuitive, but it wasn't, he kind of had a bad reputation. But everybody knew exactly what he wanted. And another guy that, you know, just because what they say sounds a little aggressive, that's how progress happens. Somebody who's pushing above and beyond what normal, average people are doing. And like, who wants to be normal or average? That doesn't sound like any fun.
True, 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 true.
Yeah.
So thanks
So
for sharing those insights. So as we were talking about the leadership, and you emphasize servant leadership in your coaching. So can you talk more about it, and how do you define that in today's fast-paced environment?
love that. And so, I wrote a book about 8 or 9 years ago titled Romancing Your Customer. And romancing your customer is all about providing experiences to your customers to where they absolutely love you, where they're raving fans. They tell everybody about it. And the foundation of that and the foundation of servant leadership is I must see things from the other person's point of view. And that's hard because when I see things through my glasses. I see things through my eyes. Okay. And so it takes conscious effort for me to say, I'm going to see this through my sales team's eyes. I'm going to see this through my finance team's eyes. I'm going to see this through my customer's eyes. But just like in Romance Your Customer, it's foundational in servant leadership. I must see things from the other person's point of view. And truthfully, you have to realize that they almost don't care about your point of view. So I must see things from their point of view. I must manage things to benefit them from their point of view. and I got to take care of them. And that's where the servant actually comes in servant leadership is I set the mission. I mean, we already talked about that. I set the mission. I set the vision. Okay. And it was big. It was best ever, best quarter ever, best project ever, best delivery ever, best customer experience, whatever it is. I set that. And then I went to get the best people. And then I went to give them, I had to listen to them so that I knew what tools to provide to them to go do the job. So I interviewed a local billionaire here in Fort Worth a couple of years ago, and he was a petroleum engineer, and he and two of his friends got downsized, and the oil and gas business will do that. Sometimes it's high and fortunes are being made, and sometimes it's low and people are going broke. Okay. And if you look at oil and gas, it does a lot of this. Okay. So they got downsized. They knew a guy at Goldman Sachs. This is probably back in the 80s, 90s maybe. They knew a guy at Goldman Sachs. They flew to New York. They raised $33 million in 20 minutes as capital for their company. Now they left the meeting owning 7% of the company total, the three of them. We own 7%. The people who put in the money own 93%. They never owned more than the 7. That's the most they ever owned. He said one of the principles on how they built that company is they would get the best people on earth to work, the best petroleum engineers, the best drillers, the best everything. And when he was asked, well, how do you know if you're paying them too much? Because the best people cost. Okay, you can't get the best people at a VA price in the Philippines. That ain't going to happen. Okay, and so he said, well, here's the thing: when you get the best people, you can't really pay too much. They'll demand that you get an ROI on their salary. Now, when Dr. Palco, when they sold the company, they sold XTO Energy to Exxon. Okay, so they were pretty big, but they sold to the 800-pound gorilla in the oil and gas business, ExxonMobil. They sold the company. He owned 0.97 point. He didn't even own a full percentage point of the company when they sold it. 0.97. And I remember when he shared that, everybody in the room said, oh, like they felt bad for him. And he said, well, keep in mind, we sold the company for $35 billion. So just to make it easy on my math, 1%, which he didn't own 1%, he owned 9,700 of 1%, but 1% of 35 billion is $350 million. And so he laughed and he said, don't feel too bad for me. I did get almost $350 million out of the company. And he's a billionaire today. And that's two different skill sets, making money and then growing money, two different things. But the lessons there were two: get the best people on the planet. You almost can't overpay them. Okay. And give them the tools to go do the job.
Really good point. Like, you can't overpay the best people.
You really can't. I had somebody on my, I have a podcast too, and I'm thrilled to be a guest on yours, but I had a guest the other day on my podcast, and he dropped a lot of golden nuggets, but the one that stuck out in my mind is you sell how you buy. And I was like, that's genius. And so what that means is this: if you go buy the very best, you're going to be able to sell to the very best. Okay. If you always buy in the basement, you're always looking for the bargain basement. Okay. When you go to sell, you're going to sell to the bargain basement. And so you got to kind of figure out who you are in life. I think it's Hormozy, or maybe it's Russell Brunson, who says, hey, friends pay full price from friends. Okay. And that's counterintuitive to what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They're like, Ghassan, and you gave me a $200,000 bid on this software application. Is there any way you can do it for 65? Okay. And that's very common in the entrepreneur community is let's just see how we can beat somebody up. But I thought it was true genius. You sell how you buy. And so, when we did that event, we did some things that had never been done before. We started out at, I think, $1,695, and we gave people 3 days before we raised the price $500 to $2,195. And everybody just howled. Okay. The committee howled, the organization howled. It's too much, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, you elected me chair. It's my call. Okay. So right or wrong, and a leader's got to be prepared to take the bullets in the chest if it's wrong. So right or wrong, it's my call. And so 3 days, raising at $500. Well, we sold more tickets in 72 hours than anybody had ever sold. Because people knew, hey, if I want to come, I want to save $500. We did no marketing for over a year, not one piece. And we sold another 100 tickets or so. And then we told people, okay, look, going to give you a little longer, but in 2 weeks, we're going up $500 more. And we sold about 100 tickets. And then after we went up to the highest price, $26.95, we sold about another 75. And so we raised more money than ever been raised, but we were selling the way I buy. Is let's deliver the best event ever. And here's Paul Harvey used to do that bit on the radio where he'd say, and now for the rest of the story. So here's the rest of the story. I already told you we were trying to get Elon Musk. Okay. Had we got, I'd already declared, if we get Elon Musk, I'm taking the ticket price to $10,000. And oh boy, you think they held it going up 500? They about lost their minds. And I'm like, who wouldn't, for a group of entrepreneurs, who wouldn't pay to sit in a room with 600 people and listen to Elon Musk for an hour? Who wouldn't pay that? Like, everybody will pay that. The price, here's where, and of course I made my chops in sales. Okay. And so like what I don't know about technology will fill a large book. But what I don't know about selling and influence and psychology is pretty skinny because I've been practicing it for a long time. But what happens is when you're very confident in what you're doing, and the easy way to be confident is, man, I know my mission. I know my vision. Okay. I know my team. I'm thinking as big as I can think. When you're confident, that confidence just carries over to everybody else. And so it's almost magical, the difference in results from somebody who's really confident and somebody who's tentative.
True. So selling value rather than just the price. So the value, there's no value. We talked about even hiring people and always getting that cheaper. So it's the same thing in selling.
Value is a great point. Okay. So many times people get fixed, even when they price their own product or service, they look at what's their cost of goods, what's it cost to do, then they want to do a reasonable markup. Okay. And they price it. And you're like, okay, that is one way to do it. But maybe a better way is this. What's the value that I'm going to deliver? Not the value I'm going to talk about, not the value I'm going to pitch, not the value I'm going to try and get them to think I'm going to deliver. What's the value I am going to deliver? And what's that worth? And that kind of clarifies, and those will be two different prices. cost of goods plus markup, delivered value, and what is that value worth? That'll be two totally different prices. Okay. And two totally different kind of buyer.
Right. And what I learned is that you also filter your buyers. The low price who are competing or negotiating the lower prices are always going to give you a tough time as well. So
Many times
you're selling at a value, you're getting a buyer who appreciate the value, who are willing to pay a price for a luxury item. And I always say, like, why do you go to Ritz for, let's say, over $1,000 per night versus another one, even though those are also good ones, like Marriott or any of those, but they're less than half the price. There is a difference. The people who go to Ritz know what value Ritz is providing. That's why they're willing to pay that price.
No doubt. One of the best organizations on the planet at romancing their customers, Ritz-Carlton. Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And so they know who they are, and they're so good at it. You know, they even sell training to other companies. You can go to Ritz-Carlton school and learn how to do it. I'll tell you this, if you can begin to see things from other people's points of view, and then you can begin, I don't care whether you sell a product or a service, your customer is judging you based on the experience of the purchase and the experience of the product or service. And they're all judging you. Don't think they're not. They are judging you every second. Okay. And so if you can see things from their point of view, realize they're judging you, and deliver an experience to where they're literally going to say, wow, that was amazing, you're golden. You'll never have to struggle for customers. You'll never have to struggle for staff, for teammates who will work with those people. You're absolutely golden. And then, one thing I share with my clients is like, take that attitude of seeing things from the other person's point of view, and then delivering experiences where they're going to say, wow, take that home. Do that with your wife. Do that with your husband. Do that with your kids. Do that with your team. Do it with your vendors. You want to see great things happen? Okay. Treat your vendors like your business depends on them, because it probably does. Okay. And they will reward you back tenfold. I've seen so many companies. So like in all of my companies, we handle accounts payable every Friday. So any invoices that come in Monday through Sunday, the next Friday, they get paid. Okay. So that's early. Now there's been times in 38 years where, it was hard, and times when we couldn't, so we just called and said, hey, we normally do it like this, but times are a little tough. We're going to be paying by the due date. Okay. And then even a couple of times where we're like, I can't even pay by the due date. It's going to be paying after that. But when you paid so early, so many times, they're always like, hey, we get it. It's going to work out. Don't worry about it. We got your back. And so you can't outgive, and I'll say God, but you might say the universe, but you can't, great leadership is less about doing things than it is about being something. You want to be a great leader? Be a better boss, be a better husband, be a better father, be a better wife, be a better friend, be a better everything. And if you concentrate on being more, you'll get more. You won't be able to stop it.
Awesome. And I'd pick up a couple of things in this message, and like one is like the percentages doesn't matter. 7% you mentioned, it's the actual number. I mean, I still look at it like I was sharing with somebody, even Jeff Bezos' current percentage in Amazon is 7% or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, world richest person. And second thing that really resonated me, when you're talking about the friends pay the full. In fact, Dan Martell says you don't look for discounts from your friend. You should be paying 110% because you are there to support them. You're not there to take advantage from them. But in general, we have seen that trend. People go to those restaurants or different places looking for discount from the people, which is okay as well. But the real entrepreneurs and real friend should be helping and
Absolutely.
supporting them.
And that just supports what I said about be the best person you can be.
Absolutely.
And that person is going to help not only their friends, maybe they'll even come to Dawn's side of the light. I want to help others who help others. That's my mission. Yeah. And with clients in commercial applications, I'm compensated very well for that because I deliver a much better experience than what I charge. Your value proposition, it ought to be this simple. When I tell you my value proposition, you got to look at the value I'm going to deliver and look at your dollars, and you should say, my dollars are worth dirt. Here, take my money. I want the value. Okay. And if your value proposition isn't that strong, I give you 15 minutes just on the phone just to work that through with you. Okay. But your value proposition should be so strong that when people look at their money, they're just like, my money is worth dirt. Take my money. I want the value that you're sharing.
Oh, absolutely. That's really the golden nugget.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I know that because of the timing, there's so much, and as I said, we could talk for a few hours. So and we may actually do that, like do multiple of those. So at the limited time, can you just share? Let's say you have 9 books. Maybe just share what those books are briefly, and then maybe we can go deeper in any of those in the future.
Yeah. So I started out, I wrote a book about call centers because one of my businesses in the call centers, and my second book is Romancing Your Customer. My third is about building your big legacy, which has a financial component, but it's really about, are people going to miss you when you're gone? What is your legacy? Because you are going. Okay. And, do you want to leave something behind? And then my fourth book, sometimes hard to keep them all straight. I think that was the gratitude book. And I've done a couple proven entrepreneur show books. I just wrote a book with an athlete, and my next book I think is going to be Loving and Leaving EO, which is going to kind of detail my journey through that. So let me say this about books, and then we can come back and talk anytime you want because you're a good buddy of mine. I think every author, every entrepreneur should be an author. And here's why. The American public put so much respect on authors. They put more respect on authors than they do on PhDs, which would hurt my feelings if I had a PhD, which I don't. Okay. And then the best book to write is a book that aligns with what your company does, that presents you as an authority in that industry. And then you should position the book and your message to get you on stages, okay, either virtual, this is a virtual stage, a podcast, or on physical stages, or both. And then you'll find that book will be the best lead generator you ever did in your life. And I do help people write books. I don't write them for them, but I teach them how to do it. And we have a software product that goes along with that AI doesn't write the book because Amazon and Google are kind of they're looking funny at 100% AI content. Okay. And they're not looking funny, but they want you to declare this is AI content. And I think they should. And human content's always going to be more valuable because it's human.
Yeah, and you can always you can quickly figure it out if it's AI content. So
yeah. So I think everybody ought to be an author. Every entrepreneur ought to be an author, and they ought to write a book. And they want to talk about that. I give them 15 minutes to talk about that. And I have the easiest, fastest, smartest way to get a book out of your heart and head onto paper with no AI will.
So that gave me an opportunity to talk about my book. So
Good.
I have a book coming soon. It's called Beyond the Download: How to Build Mobile Apps That People Love, Use, and Share Every Day. It's already with the publisher. We had a multiple back and forth. It should launch before the end of the year, based on the current dates that I have. So,
congratulations! It's a big deal to write a book.
And it took me a long time, but finally it's out.
It's brutally hard, even for really smart people like you. I mean, it's not easy to write a book. And there's about 1 million times when you ask yourself, oh, should I just quit? Do I want to put any more time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears into this? But here's an interesting thing I tell all my authors. The day you're published, not only will people look at you differently, you will look at you differently. And almost everybody,
That's a really good point.
Almost everybody looks at me the same way and says, really? I'm like, the day it's published, the day you're holding that book in your hands, okay, you will begin to see you differently. I promise.
And now I also started on my second book. So now it's also like it's a start. Once you do that, then you have ideas of 2 more, but the second one I already started. So, but the next one, I'm sure I'll do it much faster than the first one.
You will. It's like anything. You know, when I talk about my first book, I'm like, it's my first and my worst book. And they're like, why would you say that? I'm like, because it's true. It was my first book. It took me a year. It's like my brain had a baby. It was messy. I wanted an epidural. They wouldn't give me one. I thought we would never get there. And I said, I'm never going to do it again. Never do this again. Well, I started the book too in about 30 days. You know, and the more you do it, just like everything else, the first time a developer sits down to write code is the hardest time ever. And every line they write from that point on, it gets easier and easier.
So while we're on it, I want to ask you one last question before we leave. So you're also hosting a podcast, A Proven Entrepreneurship, for several years. And I believe you mentioned you had 150 episodes. Can you talk more about it? You already shared one story earlier, and if you have any other story to share in short time, but just when I talk about like what it is, working.
So I started the podcast when COVID came up. I had about 15 speaking engagements I had to cancel. And after a certain point in time, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get back on stages. I have things to say. I literally want to change the world. I want 1 million people to begin a daily gratitude practice. There's things I want to do. And so I started a podcast, and I think we published every other week to begin with, and we now publish every week. We've recorded and published, I'm going to say 150, 142, 157. I'm not exactly sure the number. And I interview proven entrepreneurs exclusively. And we have a dozen billionaires all the way down to companies that are doing a couple $1 million in revenue. And I think that the easiest way for people to learn in all of history, and one of the reasons I write books, is stories. Okay. It's not actually in the classroom. That's not the easiest way to learn. The easiest way to learn is stories. And so I interview entrepreneurs. The full name of the show, Proven Entrepreneur Show, Success Stories. and they share stories that I hope helps other entrepreneurs take the next step. And so, and there's always a next step. If you're Mark Cuban, there's a next step. If you're Barbara Corcoran, there's always a next step. But the easiest way for people to learn is to hear stories from other people and say, I could do that. That would work for me. That was painful for him. I'm doing that. I'm going to shut it down because it's going to be painful for me too. And so that's the whole purpose of the show, the mission of the show. We're, I don't know if we're at 500 yet, but we're over 400,000 downloads. So there's a couple people listening, and so love doing that. And I'd love Ghazan if you would be a guest on a future episode.
That would be my honor. Absolutely.
Okay. Well,
So don't,
we'll make a date.
Absolutely. So this is great. Thanks for sharing those nuggets. I love how you simplify the entrepreneurial journey. It's reminded us like it's not about success is not about doing more, but it's what matter most. And I love your coaching methodology, the mindset, and the two other things that I need to memorize again.
Yeah, that's all right. We talked about a lot of things: mindset, mission, and methods.
Yeah. So for listeners who want to learn more, tell us, where can they find you? Do I point them to your website, donwilliamsglobal.com, or?
Yeah, donwilliamsglobal.com is probably the easiest way, though I'm all over social media and all of the different, I own several companies. They're all everywhere. But easiest way to get to me is my email address is don@donwilliamsglobal.com. But you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Insta or TikTok I'm kind of not everywhere, but I'm in a lot of places.
Thanks for joining us on Lessons from the Leap, Don. It was really great to have you on our show.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lessons from the Leap podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll catch you next time.